Nearly 50,000 people died there. Their screams still echo through the crumbling corridors of what was once called the most haunted hospital in America. Tonight, we descend into the darkness of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, where death was so common. They built a tunnel just to hide the bodies from the living. Are you ready to discover why some places should remain abandoned? Louisville, Kentucky. 1900. America was ravaged by a deadly disease known by many as the White Death, tuberculosis. This plague claimed entire families, sometimes entire towns. No cure existed. On July 26, 1910, Waverly Hills Sanatorium opened its doors to patients in the Louisville area. What began as a modest two-story wooden structure with 2 wings that could accommodate 20 patients each would soon expand into something far more sinister. It grew to a vast 5-story facility, designed to house the endless stream of tuberculosis victims. But what they built to heal became a monument to death. Today, Waverly Hills Sanatorium has a reputation as one of the world's most haunted places. Some consider it the holy grail of haunted houses. But why? What happened within these walls that still refuses to rest? Let's start with the most chilling feature of Waverly Hills, the death tunnel. As tuberculosis ravaged the sanatorium, death became a daily occurrence. Bodies piled up faster than they could be properly removed. The sight of corpses being wheeled past living patients was devastating morale, so they built a 500-foot tunnel from the hospital to the bottom of the hill. Every day, dozens of bodies were secretly transported through this underground passage. The living patients never saw them, but something else might have followed them down. Today, visitors report feeling invisible hands grabbing at them in the tunnel. Cold spots appear without explanation, and some swear they can still hear the wheels of those death carts, echoing through the darkness. Room 502, the most feared room in the entire sanatorium. In 1928, a head nurse was found hanging from the light fixture in this very room. She was unmarried and pregnant, a scandal that would have destroyed her life in those days. Some say it was suicide. Others whisper it was something far more sinister. But her death was only the beginning. Just a few years later, another nurse threw herself from the window of room 502, plummeting 5 stories to her death on the ground below. Visitors to room 502 report overwhelming feelings of despair and hopelessness. Cameras malfunction, electronic devices drain instantly, and many claim to see the shadow of a woman still hanging from that same light fixture. Countless stories emerged of shadow people and ghostly children throughout the sanatorium. These aren't your typical ghost sightings. These are dark, human-shaped figures that move with purpose through the halls. One of the most terrifying encounters involves the children's ward. Young victims of tuberculosis filled an entire floor of the hospitals. Many never made it home. Paranormal investigators consistently report seeing small figures darting between rooms. The sound of children playing echoes through empty halls, and sometimes they reach out to touch the living. One investigator described feeling a small, cold hand slip into theirs as they walked through the children's wing. When they looked down, nothing was there. But the grip tightened. The operating theater at Waverly Hills was a place of desperate measures. With no cure for tuberculosis, doctors attempted experimental surgeries that often killed more than they saved. Patients were subjected to procedures like removing ribs to collapse infected lungs. The survival rate was less than 5%. The floor was permanently stained with blood. Today, the operating room remains one of the most active paranormal locations in the hospital. Visitors report the sounds of surgery in progress, bone, saws cutting, metal instruments clanking, and worst of all, screaming. Equipment turns on by itself. The surgical lights flicker in patterns, and some visitors claim to feel invisible hands holding them down on the operating table, just as they once held down patients who would never wake up. Perhaps the strangest phenomenon at Waverly Hills is the elevator. It still operates, despite the hospital being abandoned for decades. But it doesn't follow commands. The elevator moves on its own. stopping at floors where no one called it, the doors opened to empty hallways. Sometimes, investigators step inside only to find themselves on a completely different floor than the one they selected. But most disturbing are the reports of passengers who aren't there. The elevator descends as if weighted down by multiple people, yet only one investigator stands inside. The floor creaks under invisible weight. Some believe the elevator still carries the souls of patients who died at Waverly Hills. Every night, it makes its rounds, collecting passengers for a journey that never ends. Waverly Hills Sanatorium closed its doors as a tuberculosis hospital in June 1961, after antibiotics finally conquered the White Death. But the building's story of suffering wasn't over. The building was reopened in 1962 as Woodhaven Geriatric Center, a nursing home. But this new chapter proved just as dark as the first. Reports of patient abuse, neglect, and mysterious deaths plagued the facility until it was finally shut down in 1980 after a government investigation revealed horrific conditions. For 20 years after that, the building sat completely empty. Nature began to reclaim it. Vines crawled through broken windows. Rain leaked through collapsed ceilings. And something else, something that had never left, grew stronger in the darkness. The abandoned hospital gained notoriety as a ghost hunting destination, drawing thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators from around the world. And Waverly Hills did not disappoint. It seemed to hunger for visitors, drawing them deeper into its maze of crumbling corridors. Professional paranormal investigators from across the country have studied Waverly Hills extensively. Ghost adventures, paranormal state, most haunted, they've all attempted to document what lurks in these halls. The evidence is overwhelming and consistent across decades of investigation. Electromagnetic anomalies occur in specific patterns. Temperature drops happen in the same locations, year after year. Voices are captured on audio that speak of pain, of being lost, of wanting to go home. And the visual phenomena, shadow figures that move with purpose, shapes that shouldn't exist, eyes that watch from empty windows. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Waverly Hills isn't what technology can measure. It's what every single visitor feels the moment they step inside, an overwhelming sensation that they are not alone, that something is watching from the darkness, that something is waiting. Is it the residual energy of nearly 50,000 souls who died within these walls? Are they trapped between worlds, reliving their final moments of agony for eternity? Or is something else entirely calling Waverly Hills home, something that feeds on pain and fear, growing stronger with each passing year? The current owners, Charlie and Tina Mattingly, purchased the property in 2001 and have worked tirelessly to preserve its history. They offer tours to those brave enough to enter, sharing the documented stories and allowing people to experience the phenomena for themselves. But even they admit, some areas remain off-limits. Some doors should never be opened. Some secrets are too dangerous to uncover. They've witnessed things that defy explanation, heard voices calling their names from empty rooms, seen figures walking through walls, and they know that Waverly Hills is far from done telling its story. As night falls over Louisville, the shadows grow longer at Waverly Hills, and somewhere in those darkened halls, behind those broken windows, the patients are still waiting for visitors, waiting for help, waiting for a cure that will never come. The question isn't whether Waverly Hills Sanatorium is haunted. After decades of documented evidence, that question has been answered. The real question is, what do the spirits want? And are you brave enough to find out? If this glimpse into America's most haunted hospital sent chills down your spine, smash that like button and let us know in the comments. Would you dare spend a night at Waverly Hills Sanatorium? Subscribe for more dark tales from America's most haunted places, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a spine-tingling story. Until next time, sleep well.